Atomic Monsoon.
Welcome to the Monsoon.
Holy crap, it's Atomic Monsoon!
Liver is my life!
I've eaten a river of liver and an ocean of fish. I've eaten so much liver that I don't remember the rest of the line.
Oh, hey, welcome to Atomic Monsoon, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. How you doing, Stephanie?
I'm doing good. It's a cloudy day today.
It is kind of a cloudy day out here in usually sunny Phoenix.
It's still hot, though.
Yeah. I mean, it went from 110 to like 102, so...
Ooh.
Yeah. Hey, I want to say thanks to our friends at Def M Records for,
Thanks, guys.
Giving us some music that you just heard before we started talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can find more about them at defmrecords.com, DEAFMRECORDS.com. And support the guys that support us.
Do it.
Do it. All right, so Stephanie, the last several weeks we have been doing lists of our favorite movies and anime and stuff.
Yes, we have, and it's been fun.
It has been fun, but I also, we're not a listicle show.
No.
We are a pop culture show, and that includes all forms of pop culture that we enjoy. So this week I wanted to do something very, very different.
Okay.
And I wanted to talk about one of my favorite comic series, if not my favorite comic series of all time, Strangers in Paradise by Terry Moore.
Oh.
And so here's the thing is I've read all 100-something issues of Strangers in Paradise a few times, maybe 5 or 6, definitely 3, probably 4. Yeah. Including last week. I read the entire series all last week.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I thought, man, I really like this book, the series. We should talk about it on Atomic Monsoon. I'm not going to ask Stephanie to read 100-something issues.
I mean, I could, but...
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is that, like, it's a pretty easy read. It gets emotional as you get through it, but it's not the worst. When we were texting with Josh, unfortunately, he's busy helping his family some more this week, so he could not join us. But he was like, "Yeah, it's a binge-worthy comic," which is, I mean, that's a really good compliment.
Yes.
But I thought, hey, let's not overwhelm Stephanie. I don't know your comic reading history. I know I've lent you a few things over the last couple of years, but I don't know how much you've read outside of that.
So, I mean, I've read like a few comics. I read more manga, which, I mean, technically is the same thing, but just from Japan.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea, my reading of manga or comics is faster than my reading of novels.
Sure, that makes sense. Because
you're not obviously reading all these descriptions. You're not reading paragraph after paragraph. You get to see the image and you get to see, things like that. That I could knock out if I wanted to, like one volume of like a manga in like an afternoon sitting if I wanted to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but so I, and that's awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think everyone should read more comics or manga or manhwa or whatever country the comics originate from. I think people should read more of them. Myself included, and I read a lot of comics. But I also don't know like what kinds of comics you read and et cetera, et cetera. And so Strangers in Paradise it's a romance comic at its heart. It is a love story. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to overwhelm you. I know you probably could have read the 100-something. It's like 106 or 107 or 108, which is why I'm always inspecific about it, because I don't know off the top of my head exactly how many issues it is. But yeah, like I didn't know how you were going to react to it. So I thought, you know what? It was originally printed as a 3-issue miniseries. So I'll just lend you that. I guess I don't know. I did some research about the creation of the comic and where it came from and stuff. Do we want to go over that, or do we want to go right into some opinions, or how do you feel about that?
Why don't we go ahead and get a little bit of background for this for people who don't know what this comic is?
Okay.
Before we get into our opinions and like the basic overall story.
Okay. So Strangers in Paradise is, as I mentioned, 100-something issue series that ran between 1993 and 2006. The first 3 issues were published by Antarctic Press in 93. It is written and drawn by Terry Moore, who is from Houston, Texas, I want to say.
Okay.
The story takes place in Houston, so I'm pretty sure he's from, at least at some point, and currently he lives in Houston. I've interacted with him on Twitter a little bit. Seems like a very nice guy. Never had the chance to meet him in person, unfortunately. And yeah, so he was 37 years old, working as a film editor. When he was like, I've been messing around with doing some comics, and he tried doing some like newspaper style, like gag-a-day strips, but both couldn't get any syndications to pick him up to put him in newspapers, and kind of decided he didn't like it, from what I understand. Like it was fun, and the art, the drawing part was fun, but the thing about gag-a-day comics, and I know because I've experimented with them myself, it's pretty easy to come up with the first handful, but once you get past like the first dozen, you really quickly realize like, oh, I'm not as funny as I thought I was, or like I don't have the penchant for coming up with jokes very easily. I don't know if that's the case with Terry Moore, but that was certainly the case for me when I tried doing it. The few times I've tried several times, and and people don't see them because I get through a handful and I'm like, no, I don't have it. So
yeah, that really you have to really give credit then to the people who, have the Sunday funnies and everything like that. Because once a week, they're publishing something new, like Garfield and Baby Blues, and all of those guys have been out there forever.
Right.
And they're still making funny little comic strips for the newspapers.
Yeah, and a lot of them are daily. They're not even just on Sundays. Like some.
Oh yeah.
Some of them are Sunday only. Some of them, a particular newspaper will only run the Sunday version. But the comic itself is still a daily comic, meaning they're doing 7 a week every week. Garfield's been going since the 70s, and it's 2020. So, like, Jim Davis hates Garfield, from what I understand, but like he makes so much money off of it that he can't ever stop doing it.
Ugh.
So, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so from what I understand, Terry Moore tried doing some gag-a-day, newspaper strip comics. Didn't really work out for him, and at 37, he was like, well, I'm a film editor. I got a couple kids. I'm married. Like, if I'm gonna do comics, I have to do it now. Which, being 37 myself right now, like, oh yeah, yeah, that's a pretty good wake up call. Not necessarily for comics, but like I'm lucky. I get to be a graphic designer. I get to make art, for a living time. So that's great. But it's also great that I found it earlier in life. But yeah. So he, looked at what was going on in comics and decided to do something completely different, and wrote a story about, as he described it early on, 2 women and the guy that gets to know them.
Okay.
So yeah, and like I said, he originally published through Antarctic Press, which is a small, like very small, like publishing company. I think a lot of their stuff is creator owned. I don't know that all of it is. Some of it may be owned by Antarctic Press. I need to look into that company more specifically, admittedly. And then after the 3-issue series did well, he started publishing it himself through his own company, Abstract Studio, which he founded basically to publish Strangers in Paradise on his own.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and so almost every single one of those issues was written and drawn by Terry Moore and published by his wife, Robin.
All right.
There were a few issues at one point where comics legend Jim Lee came in and did some artwork, just to have some fun. And there were like 8 or 9 issues that were published by Jim Lee under his Wildstorm imprint through Image Comics in 96, I want to say, 1996. But after a few issues, they decided that the partnership didn't work out as well as they had hoped, or whatever. As far as I know, everything was amicable, and Terry Moore went back to self-publishing.
Yeah.
Which he continues to do to this day.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and every comic he's created is now crossed over and is they're all doing a big thing called 5 years, where it's all the characters from all the comics that he's created are all like interacting with each other to stop the end of the world.
Love it.
Yeah. Anyway, so I just rambled for about 8 minutes about all that. So, all right, Steph. So I have not talked to you really since last week when we decided to do this. So how did you feel about reading Strangers in Paradise?
So, admittedly, and this is just my own procrastinating mindset, you sent me the link and everything, and it sat on my computer, waiting and waiting and waiting for me to finally open my computer to read it. And it wasn't because I looked at it and go, I'll read it later. It was literally like I just had other stuff going on.
Sure.
There was work and there was other things happening and stuff like that. Other reading things that I was doing. And finally I was like, all right, I clicked it, sat down, and I just started to read it. At first I was reading the page and I stopped and I went, this is not a manga, read it correctly. And then I had to reread it. It was like the first two panels, and I was looking at it and I'm just like, this is confused. Oh, that's why I'm reading it the wrong way.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because a couple things here. One, it is a black and white comic.
It is.
Which I always forget to mention to people, because to me it's not a big deal. I've read so many black and white comics that it's just, this one doesn't have color. Who cares?
Most manga is black and white.
But most manga is black and white because they want to print it cheaply and quickly.
Yes.
So that is a good. And I've read so much manga again that like black and white doesn't bother me. So okay, that's funny that you saw black and white, immediately went to manga and started reading panels right to left rather than left to right. Yeah.
Actually, it was less because of the black and white. The black and white didn't bother me. I saw the black and white, and my thought in my head was like, okay, I read a lot of manga that's black and white, but at the same time, a lot of the comics that have been made and created in America, usually they are colored, or there's usually like a page or two that is colored, and then the rest are black and white to kind of provide emphasis of like, this is what they look like with color. Now that you see that, here we go. Let's just go with non-color for the rest of it, type of thing.
Right.
Whatever's easiest. But no, it was just, I literally read the latest chapter of Fairy Tale 100 Year Quest like an hour or so before I picked this up. So I was reading it the other way just because that's what I had been reading beforehand. So it's really funny.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But anyway, so I started reading it, and at first I was like, okay, where is this going? We have a high school play. What's happening? Oh, this poor girl. That's a nightmare.
We should mention, now that we're several minutes into this, this comic is intended for, I don't want to say mature readers. Like there's not really nudity or sex. I think there are some nipples later in the series when you get into it, but like it's I would say 13 and up. Yeah. Right? Like PG-13 comic, PG-13. So we probably will mention some things that maybe are not necessarily the most appropriate for younger readers. There's no F-bombs in the comic, as far as I remember. So we'll try and keep our language clean. But for example, as Stephanie was mentioning, there's a high school play, and Francine Peters, one of the main characters, accidentally gets her toga ripped off, and she ends up standing topless in front of the audience. So that's how the comic starts. So hey, parents, if you're listening with your kids, I think from here you can decide whether or not your kids are responsible and mature enough to deal with this kind of story.
Yeah. So. Yeah. But yeah, no. So like it was interesting, and I first saw that, and they had the whole play going, the Strangers in Paradise play, and Francine's there getting ready to go on, and then there's her friend. Okay, I know it's I know it's Katina. Like her full name is Katina.
Katina Chuvansky,
but she goes by Kachu.
Right. Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I said that right.
It's the cat from Katina and the Chu from Chuvansky, so it's Kachu.
Kachu.
Yeah.
Okay.
So her name is a contraction.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny is that they make a joke later in the comic when I was reading it, that I think it's when she gets arrested, which we'll get to obviously that point later, but and the cop calls her Sneezy. In the back of my head, all I could think about was the scene from Robin Hood Men in Tights, which is where like, achoo, bless you.
Yep. Choose my name, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, like when I first started reading it, I was like, okay, I'm going into this completely blind. I don't really know what this is about.
Yes.
And then I didn't quite grasp immediately that there was a time jump.
Sure. Right. Yep.
And that this was, okay, that was their high school days. And then this is now the present day until I think a little bit later when we finally see Freddie, Francine's ex.
Yes.
Because I know she breaks up with him in that first comic. But after that, then it's like, okay, now the pieces are coming together really, really nicely. And, for a first, first 3 volumes or chapters or whatever.
It was first 3, just like regular periodical comics.
Okay.
Put in one book.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But for the first 3, it was, it's definitely an interesting story. And I could see where a lot of people could relate to that.
Yes. Yeah.
Where they could relate to the violent friend who will do anything to protect them, but at the same time is probably the one that would always end up in prison for them.
Yeah.
But also, Francine, the girl who's, looking for love and finding Mr. Right. And it's like, I know a lot of people who are looking for Mr. Right or Mrs. Right or
Mr.
Mrs. Right, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Like, it's only it's only 3 so far, but
right.
I can definitely see what Josh is getting at by saying it's definitely binge worthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we haven't dived in further to what happens after that, obviously, because I've only read the first 3.
Right.
But what I've read so far is like, if this were an actual television series and I was watching it one day, I would be invested and I would want to learn more.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, like I'm glad that I handed you this comic that I've been a fan of for almost 20 years. And I intentionally sent you in blind because I was like, and I know I told you it's one of my favorites, but otherwise I was like, hey, like let's just see, let's give you as much hey, I picked up a random thing as possible. So
yeah, no, I mean, I'm doing the same thing right now, oddly enough, with a friend of mine. Like I was, we were doing some writing. Just to tell a quick story, we were doing some writing a couple weekends ago, and and he asked a question that was involving an idea we had for a script, and I said, you know what you need to do? You need to read this book. And I told him about my favorite book in the whole world. I'm like, you need to read this. This will answer all your questions. So now I've been like receiving messages from him, updating me on him reading the book, going, oh my God, this book isn't, oh my God, this book, oh my God, this book.
Excellent.
I would have given him my physical copy, but I loaned it to another friend of mine. So because he started reading it, I was like, okay, I need to kind of follow along. And so I've been listening to the audiobook on YouTube.
Oh, cool. So,
but yeah. But I totally get your point, Andy.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, I guess how do we transition from here? Hey, you read it, you liked it, I liked it, it's one of my favorites. We got a half hour left.
The end.
The end. Yep, that's it. Goodbye everyone. No, so I guess I'll go into some of the things that I like about it.
Okay.
So when this book came out in '93, I did not pick it up right away. That was me reading X-Men and Spider-Man very much. I found out about it in Wizard magazine. Wizard, the Guide to Comics, was the mainstream comic publication magazine. There were other comic magazines in the 90s for sure, but Wizard was like the cool kid. Like it was the popular comic magazine. And they, over the span of like 2 years, they probably did like 4 or 5 articles about Strangers in Paradise and where it was going and what was going on with it. Which to me says somebody at the magazine really liked it. Because they didn't cover like any other independent comic the same way they covered SIP. So so that was awesome, and yeah, it was a few years later. I was at I think it was Atomic Comics. I think when the Atomic Comics stores were still open here in Phoenix in the early 2000s, I ran across a couple of the trade paperbacks and I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to read this. I'm just going to buy all 3 of these right now. And I bought the first 3 and sat down and read them all 3 in one evening. And I was like, this is friggin' great. And ended up going back and eventually buying all of the whole series in graphic novel format. And it was great because I when I was buying it, the last couple hadn't come out yet. So I actually got to finish the series with everyone else. And then like buy the so I did have the last few issues in issue form. I have sold those since because I was like, well, I don't want to go back and collect all of it.
Yeah.
So I did end up getting the whole graphic novel collection, and then I sold some of those, and I bought the what are called the pocket books. So it's the whole thing condensed into 6 volumes, rather than the like 19 otherwise. And since then, I haven't bought it, but there's the omnibus collection, which is the whole thing in 2 huge books.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 2 1,200-page books. For the whole series, and it's like $100, $150, something like that. So it's the most economical way to get the whole series at once, but also it's 2 big, heavy books.
As someone who has several huge, heavy books that consist about that many pages, except without pictures, I get that.
Yeah. And then the whole series went digital in like 2016, 2017, 2018 or so. So I rebought the whole thing digitally. So I've actually paid for this comic quite a few times. And yeah. So I really like Terry Moore's art. And I will try to keep my comments just to the first 3 issues here. But obviously, like I said before, I've read the whole thing a few times. So, I will try. It definitely evolves and gets better as the series goes on.
Yeah.
Which is good. These first 3 issues are the first 3 full comics he ever published. So, like, this is it. This is the beginning. And he started... Like, these first 3 issues are so much better than most people's, like, 100th comics. Like,
That's saying something.
Yeah. From what I understand, Terry Moore is also self-taught. Like, he did take a couple of classes about how to draw with a Disney animator at one point, but I did not go to art school. Like, he just figured out how to draw, which is even more impressive.
Oh, yeah.
I like that the characters don't look like comic book characters.
No, I agreed. Like, even I noticed that when I was looking at the comic. Like, at first I was like, this has a bit of an Archie look to it. And then as like certain panels came by, I'm like, now it doesn't. Now it has like a different look to it. I don't know what this look is.
Yeah.
I can't put words to describe it.
It's more of just a traditional illustration style more than anything. He does, he definitely does go into some very cartoony, like Archie style faces, especially like he does a really good job of morphing faces to fit the tone of the moment. Right. So if you get Francine and Kachu joking around laughing, they look more cartoony, but when they're being sad and somber, they look more, almost like Renaissance paintings.
Yeah.
Right. Like, still illustrated, still kind of Saturday morning cartoony, but like in a more serious, illustrative, realistic way.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned David at all.
We have not mentioned David. I like David from what little I've seen of him so far. I like David. Yeah.
So we're introduced to David. Kachu goes to a museum, and she's looking at a statue, and I don't recognize the statue immediately, but it is, it's a man holding a falling woman, and she puts what I'm pretty sure is a used tampon in the man's outstretched hand. And David walks over and sees it, and straight up says to her, like, interesting commentary you made back there. And her response is, sexist crap.
What I got was interesting about that, and this is one of the most shocking things I had when I first saw him, was the fact that he picked it up.
Yeah.
Like most men, like, and this is not including you. Like, most men that I had conversations with normally they don't like to talk about women's time of the month.
Right.
In any way, shape, or form.
Right. Never mind sanitary products or anything. Right.
Exactly. And this guy doesn't even know her. It's just like, just holding it up. And I'm just like, dude, go wash your hands. That's just my response to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a reasonable response. Go wash your hands. Yeah. Fortunately, they go out in the rain. So, that's some cleaning, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Did he leave it there or did he throw it away?
We don't know.
Okay.
So I have it pulled up on my screen right now. Like, he picks it up, and the next panel, they were in another room, and he's going over and talking to her.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
We don't know.
No, I don't know what happened to the sanitary product that she left on the statue.
Yeah. But I mean, in the few panels that we met David, even when I was just reading, when we just meeting him and the fact that, so Andy, have you ever seen the show iCarly?
I want to say I've tried watching an episode, but it wasn't for me. But I'm aware of the show. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, so there are two characters in the show, Carly and Sam. Okay. Kachu is very much what I would imagine Sam to look like as an adult.
Okay.
The blonde who doesn't give a crap, who kind of is a strong, independent woman who will do her own thing, type of thing.
Yes.
And be the one who's
kind of. Kachu is the strong, independent female character that will just go do her own thing. Yes. Consequences be damned.
Yes. Yes, and that's very much Sam's character in iCarly.
Okay.
But when so it's just the dynamic between the two girls, it just kind of reminded me of that. But in that moment when they're out in the rain and she's just kind of telling him, she says, piss off.
Right.
Pretty much. Leave me alone. Don't bother me type of thing. And he's just like, he somehow broke through her barrier and was just like, yo, want to grab coffee?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the line, he says, well, do you mean the sculpture says I should piss off, or are you telling me to piss off?
Yeah.
And, she's like, what difference? And he's like, well, it makes a difference. I mean, do I ever have a hope of getting a cup of coffee with, do I give up all hope of ever having a cup of coffee with the statue or you? And she smirks, and the next time we see them, they're having coffee.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So, yeah. The way that Wizard Magazine described Strangers in Paradise is David loves Kachu loves Francine, and Francine loves the idea of getting married, having kids, and living in a house with a white picket fence.
Oh.
Yeah. Did you not get all that?
No, I got all that. It's just, it's very interesting. I caught the David loves Kachu part, or that he's at least interested in her.
Yeah.
I definitely caught, especially after that, the makeout scene between Francine and Kachu that happens in the first comic.
Right. Yeah.
That there is something there on Kachu's side toward Francine, and I definitely saw the white picket fence idea. But I think because in the first three comics, it's literally her getting over Freddie and all the things that happen with that.
Yes.
It hasn't been painted completely in yet that's what she's looking for, that's what she wants, but it definitely is obvious that she is looking for Mr. Right. So.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, and I don't know. I these first three issues are a good introduction to the characters. I think the next 12 or 13 issues are really where you get what Strangers in Paradise is about. It picks up 6 months later, 9 months later, something like that. Kachu has returned from disappearing for a couple months, and it turns out she was visiting a friend in Canada who is dying of AIDS.
Oh, geez.
In a comic that came out in 1994.
Wow.
So yeah, let's actually talk about that a little bit, right? This comic came out in 1993. One of the lead characters is queer as hell.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're saying this takes place in Houston, Texas? That's even bigger.
Yeah. It's I don't know that I'm necessarily the right person to describe when something is or is not feminist without absolutely knowing authorial intent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Terry Moore was trying to make a feminist comic, but I feel like this would qualify as one,
Mm-hmm.
especially given the time that it came out.
Oh yeah.
Um, so yeah, and it was so different and so refreshing. Like, not even from when it came out, but even when I was reading it, like, it was nothing else I was reading, nothing else I'd ever experienced was like Strangers in Paradise.
Yeah.
It really, really kind of stood on its own. Like, as I've read more and stuff, like there's definitely some manga that is closer to this, like more slice of life kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Although. Yeah, let's talk about. I don't know. Do we want to talk about Kachu getting arrested there?
Sure, we could talk about because that's a great way to get arrested, honestly.
Yeah. So, leading up to it, Francine and her boyfriend Freddie have been dating for a year. Francine waited to sleep with Freddie until their 1-year anniversary, but didn't tell him that. She just told him they were waiting. She was waiting until it was the right time.
And I, as a female here,
yeah.
I totally get Francine, wanting to wait and things like that because it sounds like based off what she was describing, she had past traumas where she would go in, she would rush things too fast, and then that guy would walk out on her.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and the more detail is gone into later, but very much, Francine would get a boyfriend, sleep with him, and then once he. And it disgusts me to say it this way, but once he got what he wanted,
Mm-hmm.
he would leave.
Oh yeah, no.
And so so Freddie was supposed to be different, right? Her idea going in with Freddie was, well, if I make him wait, then he won't leave.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, she made him wait a little bit too long, and he ended up sleeping with his was it his secretary or.
No, his secretary got fired.
That's right. Yeah.
This is like some random businesswoman person.
Right. Yeah. And Francine walks in with a trench coat and just some lingerie, ready to give it up on their anniversary, and Freddie's already busy with someone else.
Yep.
So yeah, and they. She chases him out to the park, right? Is that the same?
No. It seems like it's like the next day or like something like that. He calls her and he said, I have it pulled up here. He's calling her and saying like, "Hey, let's have some lunch. Let's meet in the park," type of thing, and then we can talk all this out. And she tries to have sex with him in the park.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she strips down and tries to get with him, and it doesn't
end well for her.
Doesn't end well. No. And then Kachu sees what happened to Francine, and
she drove home in an emotional mess and practically crashed into their house.
That's right. Yeah. And yeah, so Kachu sees that, hears Francine say that it was Freddie, so she hunts Freddie down and hangs him up, painted like a clown, in the window of a department store.
Mm-hmm.
And he is naked. He is naked with some clown makeup.
Yep.
Yep.
And there's very startled and or amused and or disturbed and or other emotioned passerbys that are looking at him.
Yeah, people who are trying to look away, people who are laughing, people who are looking at the magnifying glass conveniently placed over his groinal area.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, in the third issue. Oh, go ahead.
But to be fair, though, like before all that happened, she threatened to like castrate him.
Yes, which she did not do.
No.
but
it definitely scared him.
Yeah. And then the third issue, Katina gets arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And then, how do we want to describe this?
Very delicately.
Yeah. The prison guard tries to take advantage of her.
Mm-hmm.
And She resists. We don't know what happened exactly, but it's the end of one page as he's holding her by the hair, making some very inappropriate comments at her. And next time we see her, one of the other police officers and is letting David in to let her free because David's paid her bail. And Kachu, who by the way is described as being like 5'2" and like barely 100 pounds, has this 300-pound man on the ground on his stomach and is fish hooking both of his nostrils.
Yep.
And he's screaming bloody murder. Yep.
And she just full on owns him in that moment.
Yeah.
And I apologize for laughing. I know like the situation itself is actually not supposed to be funny, but it makes me laugh because of the fact that she was in a vulnerable situation. That is a difficult one to discuss for many people, but the fact that the next time we see her, we hear the scream of bloody murder, we think, oh God, something horrible has happened to her, and we see the poor man is been beaten to a pulp by this just girl.
Little tiny girl. Yeah. So here's the thing: is that it is a very serious situation, but the absurdity of the reversal of it is what makes it funny.
Yes.
So yeah. And then at the end, Francine breaks up with Freddie and straight up tells him, "Hey, I was waiting, and the thing that I was waiting for was our 1-year anniversary, which is the day you walked out on me."
Yep.
And he's left sitting in his office chair, just very depressed. And
she also threatened to blackmail him if he didn't drop the charges against Kachu.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because he's a lawyer and apparently was taking some under the table deals or something. Yeah. And then at the end, Kachu and Francine and David all have dinner and toast each other, and it's a nice happy ending.
It is a nice happy ending.
So, yeah. I don't know what to say next.
I don't know. So I'll say something then.
Okay.
This comic is very interesting because I think you told me like the year it came out because it came out during the 90s. And as someone who was born in the 90s but mainly grew up in the 2000s, reading this comic is very, very interesting because based off all of the other forms of media and TV shows and other things that I have seen where a lot of these elements and things have happened, where you do see the girl who is incredibly strong and badass and you don't really want to mess with her, who kind of just ones up a guy who's definitely twice her size. I've seen that in numerous cases, oddly enough, including iCarly, where Sam actually took down a 6'5" like girl who was probably like some basketball player or female wrestler or whatever, and she takes her down in the middle of a smoothie shop.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. It's great. But it's so interesting to see like the parallels with other forms of media and things that I have encountered, but also just seeing how this was a slice of life in a time where some of these things were happening and some of these things were not talked about. And
none of these things were talked about.
Oh, yeah.
So in 1993, I was 10 or 11, depending on what time of year it was, because my birthday's in the middle of the year. And I knew what gay people were, right? But I didn't know that it was a thing, right? Like, I mean, and that sounds stupid, but like, think about when you were 10, right? And versus like, and what you knew about just sexuality in general, right? And you think about how much is just at the forefront of media now, right? In 93, like, there were no gay characters on television.
Yeah.
And if there were, I certainly wasn't aware of them. Or it was the one friend that showed up on that one episode.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, like none of the main cast characters were not heterosexual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is actually one of the great things about independent comics, independent productions in general, is this was just Terry Moore telling a story, right?
Yeah.
Is one guy writing and drawing a thing, and getting a small press publisher to put it out for him, and it wasn't for another decade that stuff like this started showing up in more mainstream forms of entertainment.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like, I mean, like, so for me, I mean, I've watched, way too much television in my life. I've watched a lot of movies. I've read a lot of books, things like that. And I've probably encountered characters when I was younger, but didn't realize till I rewatched it later that were definitely, either gay or bi or whatever. But it honestly wasn't until I was in junior high and I was reading the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare, which is one of my favorite all-time book series.
Okay.
I own every single one of them that she has written about that universe of Shadowhunters. I'm not kidding. Like, there's just all of them are out in my living room right now.
Sure.
But in the third book, there are these two characters, Magnus and Alec. Magnus is a warlock. Alec is, like a 19-year-old kid. And they have fallen in love with each other.
Yeah.
And they share a kiss in the third book in front of everybody. And as, a junior high kid, that was my first truly, like, I remember in the back of my head experience where I witnessed the same sex do anything together. Like, in the sense of like kissing, hugging, intercourse, anything like that. And that was just a kiss and a hug. And I was just like, my jaw was on the floor. The book was like in my hands. And I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I should go run and tell my friends. I just sat there shocked. And every time now that I've gone back and read the book or even watched the series, the Shadowhunter series that was on Freeform, every time I see those two characters, I'm rooting for them more than the main couple sometimes.
That's fantastic. Yeah. and it's so I think that this goes to show that, like, it's any sort of change that you want in entertainment, any more representation you want, someone's doing it, right? Someone is doing it somewhere.
Yep.
It may be a small independent black and white comic being published by some publisher you've never heard of.
Yep.
It may be some web comic that you've never seen before. It may be some YouTube series that no one has shared the link to. But someone's probably doing the type of representation that you want. And the more popular and the more support that these smaller independent things get, the more likely you are to see this stuff happening in more mainstream forms of entertainment.
Yes, for sure.
And I kind of feel like that's a good place to end.
I kind of feel like it too, but how much time do we have left?
Like 8 minutes.
Okay.
So, so I don't know. I feel like most of this episode is just me kind of gushing over this comic series that I love. I'm trying to portray actual information about it as well, but clearly I'm very biased. So,
well, as someone who has just been recently introduced to it, and this is for anyone else who's listening that has maybe been intrigued about this series or has not looked into it, I highly recommend this series. I mean, I'm new to this. I kind of want to read more.
Okay.
Which now I'm going to get like an email from Andy with like 50 more volumes, but
I mean, I'll be reasonable about it, but yeah.
Okay, so 2 a day. But anyway, but still though, it's the thing where I do want to actually look more into it and just read it, because it is a nice slice of life thing to look into and to read. And if you are looking for a form of escape and, just things you want to read and look into, if you want to just escape life or work or stress or whatever, this is a great series, I think. At least just based off the first 3 parts.
First 3 issues, yeah.
The first 3 issues. And here's my thing. For me, depending on what I read, and I specifically say read, I don't say watch. Depending on what I read, if it doesn't pick up immediately, I normally don't continue to read it. Yeah,
okay. That's fair.
I say that because, go back, I'm going to reference the Mortal Instruments here again. When I first read the first couple chapters, I'm like, okay, this is neat, this is cute, but I'm going to give it till, I'm going to give it to at least usually I give it to chapter 6 or chapter 10, depending on how short the chapters are. And I think by chapter like 4 or 5, suddenly, actually not in chapter 4 or 5, like in like the first or second chapter, like a demon just gets like beheaded in the middle of like a club, and I'm just sitting here going like, this is the beginning of the book. What am I reading? And this is amazing. And then now I'm completely hooked on that series. So, but there are other books that I have read that I've tried to get into that are even Star Wars books that I've read that, they still haven't even picked up. And I'm maybe more than halfway through the book now, and it's just taken me forever to get through them.
Yeah.
And it's because they're not focusing on the action or the adventure or maybe even the character development. They're focusing on one particular thing, and it was not the thing I was expecting with the book. And so now I'm like, okay, I need to finish this. I need to read this just because it is Star Wars and I want to learn more. But there are times though where I just don't finish it. An example is actually the first Twilight book. I've never even finished it. I could not finish that book because it just did not.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. I was just like looking at it and I'm like, this is boring. I put it down. So
there you go.
I still saw the movies though, but I just put the book down.
But you read all of Strangers in Paradise.
I did.
Or at least all of volume 1. But yeah.
All of volume 1, yeah, and I would be willing to read more.
Yeah. Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, if you are interested in if you've made it this far into the episode, I'm going to guess that you're probably kind of interested in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. You can go to comiXology.com. comiXology is the world's largest distributor of digital comics. You just search for Strangers in Paradise and it'll come up. You can buy single issues, you can buy the graphic novels, however you want to do it. You can go to Amazon and you can order the graphic novels or the omnibus edition. Sometimes they go on sale there, but otherwise not. And that's how you get that. Would be probably the easiest way to get the print copies. I am a big fan of supporting comic book stores, especially right now, since a lot of them are really struggling with the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of them, it's not safe for the shop owners to open the store, but a lot are doing mail order and they're doing curbside delivery, and some are even doing home delivery. So you can call 1-888-COMIC-BOOK, or you can go to comicshoplocator.com and find a comic shop in your area. Give them a call, ask if they have Strangers in Paradise or if they can order it for you, and support your small local business and a small independent creator, because listen, this is Terry Moore's life. The guy makes independent comics, and that's how he supports himself and his family right now. So any extra sales would be great. Again, the fastest way to get it, you can just go to comiXology. You can just buy it right now. And you could have bought it in the amount of time from the first time I mentioned comiXology to now, you could have bought it.
Wow. That's fast.
Yeah. So and comiXology is owned by Amazon. So if you have an Amazon account, which let's face it, you probably do, you can just use all your Amazon login stuff and the credit cards you already have on file with them. So it's super fast and super easy. So just, hey, if this is something that you're interested in checking out, I think you should.
Yes.
First volume's like $10, right? Like, it's not a huge investment to just try it. And if you like it, you can get the rest. And if you don't like it, hey, it was $10. And I understand that not a lot of people have an extra $10 right now. But if you do, if you are someone that has it, hey, it's only $10.
It's only $10.
Yeah. Do you have any last thoughts there, Steph?
Not really. No, I don't have any other last thoughts. But what I will say is that if you guys liked us talking about Strangers in Paradise, and if there are other maybe graphic novel series or even just like maybe actual books or novels, because I know we don't really talk a whole lot about like graphic novels or novels on this series. We talk more about like video games and comics and movies and TV shows. But if you guys have one that you want us to talk about that maybe we have looked into, that won't take us forever to read because there's like 17 books of them, we might be willing to check out. At least I might be willing to check out. But just let us know, guys. Like, what do you guys thought about Strangers in Paradise? If you have read it, if you haven't read it, and do it all on our social media. Where can they find our social media, Andy?
Hey, you can find us at Atomic Monsoon on Twitter and Facebook. You can find us at atomic_monsoon on Instagram. You can email us atomicmonsoon@gmail.com. And, something that I keep meaning to say and I keep forgetting to is if you do like what we're doing, go to your podcast aggregator, whatever your podcast app is, and subscribe to us. Just hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you don't miss an episode. The thing that helps us the most is downloads and positive reviews. So whatever podcasting you're using, 5-star review would be great. A little tiny review would be great. Just something to help more people find us. And I'm just going to say it straight up. Like, the more people that listen to us, the better chance we have of getting some advertisers so that we can make some money doing this. And, that would help support us. So that would be, if you like what we're doing, please help us do it more.
Yes. We like what we're doing too.
Yeah.
You like what we're doing because we want to keep doing it for you.
Yeah. And, like I said, Strangers in Paradise is one of my favorite things. So I was like, hey, we should talk about this. And we did. And so if there's one of your favorite comics that you want us to talk about, let us know. I'm always looking for new stuff. I'm willing to give volume 1 of basically anything a shot. And if you guys start recommending things that I already own, then even better.
Yeah.
Because I own a lot of comics.
He does. He does a lot of comics.
Yeah. And so anything that we can read, maybe up to about 10 or 12 issues, something I can lend Stephanie pretty easily. Like, let us know, or something Stephanie can get a hold of pretty easily. If you're like, hey, you should read Flex Mentallo or Old Miracle Man. It's like, yeah, those things aren't in print right now. So that's going to be a little bit harder to get. But if you're like, hey, I think you should read, this one random volume of Spider-Man. Right? Sure. I'll talk about some Spider-Man.
I'm down to talk some Spider-Man too.
Yeah. Or Batman or whomever, right?
Whatever.
Yeah. Let us know. Hit us up on the social medias or email us atomicmonsoon@gmail.com. And support people. Support people who make things you like.
Support your local businesses, support your friends, support your family, support yourself. Be a good person.
Yeah. Support people you like, but also be responsible to yourself. If you can't afford it, I understand, right?
Yes.
That makes sense. But if you can drop $10 or whatever, give it a shot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's gonna do it. I think we're done.
I think it is. Yes.
All right. Well, now I want liver and a milkshake.
Please don't put them together, though.
Not a liver milkshake.
Oh God, no. I think even Hawkeye Pierce would vomit at that idea. A chocolate milkshake, or actually maybe a Dr. Pepper shake from Whataburger instead.
Well, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Pepper milkshakes are pretty good, actually.
They are.
One of my friends, the Sisters That Don't Do Anything on YouTube. One of them actually recommended to me mixing Dr. Pepper and cream soda. So next time I go to the grocery store to buy some soda, I'm going to have to get the two of those and try combining them and see how it goes.
I mean, I always recommend doing Dr. Pepper floats. The things I always say, take your favorite flavor of ice cream, because I use chocolate, but I have had it with vanilla. Put chocolate ice cream and Dr. Pepper and a Dr. Pepper float, and it's delicious.
You know what else is surprisingly good is Sprite and whipped cream.
Oh, really? I can believe that.
I just tried to be doofy one day, and it actually was pretty good. So it's a lot of sugar and no caffeine. So depending on how you feel about that. Anyways, we've gone way off topic. Hey guys, have a great night. Have a great week. Be safe out there.